Thanks for tuning in to this special show. Now, these are the latest developments in the Tigress Avni killing row. The shooter, Tigress Avni's shooter, in fact, has got a clean chit from the Maharashtra Forest Department, and a letter to that effect has been sent to the Hyderabad Commissioner. However, there are several questions that remain unanswered, several questions that have been raised by the NTCA as well as by the petitioner, to which there are no answers that have been provided in the letter. Not only that, there are several discrepancies as well that have emerged and that show completely contrary points as far as the letter is concerned and as far as the reality is concerned. Let's first listen in to what the petitioner had to say.
What is your take on the fact that after two successive reports which have questioned the violations in this particular case, the case now has been closed?
This case has been closed, I suppose, as far as the FDCM is concerned. I genuinely hope the state has not closed this matter. As far as the FDCM is concerned, I think it has delayed acquiring the cartridges and the guns. There is a discrepancy here. According to the reference, they have used Asghar's license. The license clearly states 5 weapons licensed to Asghar, and yet only 1 gun was got back. How did the investigation officer know which one to get back? This all seems well, settled between everybody involved.
Do you believe that it's more shocking that the shooter in question here, Asghar, has been let off?
He definitely has a godfather, political or otherwise. He definitely has a godfather who seems to be protecting him since November 3rd, from the time probably he or she came to know about it, or maybe second night itself. We do believe that a lot of violations which have been clearly mentioned in the NTCA inquiry report and in the state inquiry report, it cannot be closed as easily as the investigation officer of FDCM claims. The whole idea about NTCA's, completely washing its hands over the national animal is really depressing, because how long will they say this is a state matter and a federal matter? The national animals issue and the apex body for tiger conservation, the NTCA, has to take responsibility at the end of the day.
Let's in fact go across to my colleague Amita, who's joining us at this point. Amita, as far as Tigress Avni is concerned, there have been so many issues, there have been so many questions that have been raised, and that just never seems to end. But unfortunately, despite all the questions and all the discrepancies, we're still seeing a letter from the Maharashtra Forest Department that has been sent saying that the case itself has been closed and giving a clean chit to Avni's shooter.
Well, that's correct, and no explanation whatsoever in the letter that was sent by the FDCM to the Commissioner of Hyderabad Police, very, very clearly pointing out that Asghar Ali Khan, the shooter in question, has been given a clean chit and that the case has been resolved, investigated and closed. In fact, that is the word coming in from the investigative officer. Now, we spoke to members of both the committees, the state committee and the NTCA committee, which very clearly pointed out the whole self-defense theory was busted. They had pointed out that there were several violations as far as the killing of Avni was concerned. And when we spoke to them, they said that that their committee reports is something that the state government should look into. The NTCA has done its part as far as the report is concerned, but it only acts as an advisory body. Hence, considering it's a state matter, now going forward, it can only be handled legally, is what the members told me.
All right, Amita, stay with us. I'm also being joined on the phone line by Jose Lewis, who is an NTCA member. Thank you very much, Jose, for joining us. Let's first get your perspective on this whole issue, because like Amita was pointing out, there were a lot of issues that were raised by the NTCA, the self-defense theory, among others. Now the case, of course, has been closed by the Forest Department.
Thank you. And see, the NTCA committee, actually, we went to the site and we have done inspection. And we have talked to people who are part of the team, and we filed a report which is already in the public. So the report clearly stated what went wrong and what went right, and the facts were there. And there is no change in the stand of any committee member or NTCA itself. So the report was made public. So 2-member of NTCA committee, 2-member NTCA committee and 5-member state committee, which actually, interestingly, the state committee report is not published in the public domain. I couldn't see it anywhere. But both this, 7 people from with various level of expertise found out that there are problems, there are things to be investigated, and there are, things which were not right. And here, a single person team is investigating the situation, and they are finding that, okay, there's nothing to worry about. And interestingly, yes, of course, the ACF or the officer who is investigating, technically he is the person who is supposed to investigate a wildlife death in his area. But also we have to consider that this person is also part of the entire operation where the tiger was eliminated.
Right.
So an unbiased set of 2 committees, a 5-member committee and a 2-member committee, which gave reports, which are, I'm not contesting whether, the truth which we found is the ultimate truth or not. What we found was truth, and we submitted it as truth.
Right.
So
like you pointed out, Joseph, I just interrupt you there, that there were several points that the state committee, the team had in fact brought to light, including tampering of evidence and the fact that they followed illegal procedures, as well as the hiring itself of the shooters who did kill Tigress Avni. But do you think that enough has in fact been done by the NTCA, given the fact now that here we're seeing the Forest Department completely closing down the case?
Independent body, it's a central body, and we were appointed as committee members. We had no connection with the case on the ground or any other way. We were randomly selected because of our backgrounds. And we have done an investigation for NTCA, and it was a neutral investigation, and we were there to find the facts and the truth. So we found the fact and truth and written it down and submitted to NTCA. And NTCA given it to the state, and NTCA made it public when people asked for the report. So that's a straightforward mechanism.
Given that it is the National Tiger Conservation Authority here, the NTCA, and given the seriousness of this entire case and the way it has sort of gone through the loops and several problems that have emerged in the way all of this was carried out, do you think the NTCA as a body has done enough? That is my question. I
think they have done absolutely enough, because the moment the situation happened, NTCA has constituted a committee, and they were the first to react with an investigation. So that is one thing. Now, here, technically speaking, a crime investigation, a matter which relates to the death of an animal, a Schedule 1 animal, in the forest or outside the forest, it's a state matter where the state officer or forest officer has to do an investigation. So, under the Wildlife Protection Act, he has done an investigation, and his findings are his findings. Right. So now, in my opinion, it should be a court, because it is neither NTCA or the state, but a court of law has to take a decision that, whether this is correct, because a court can examine all the reports, facts, because you have the postmortem report, you have got 2 committee reports, you have got so many other direct or indirect evidences, will tell you the truth. My only thing is that, in any crime, any situation, anything which happened, the killing of an animal, you have to always look at the preparation of the person, because what I could gather from the reports or whatever out in the public domain as of now is that it is a self-defense. Now, that self-defense theory itself, we very clearly pointed out that the self-defense theory is not standing, because of we examined the photographs which were taken soon after the incident. We have examined videographs. We recreated the crime scene. So that is what we could do. We were not there when the crime happened, but from whatever we could gather, we could analyze from the evidences which we got. We found out what happened. So now I think the matter should go to a court, because that is where the decision has to be taken, because a court has all the right to examine everything and find out what exactly happened.
Right. All right. Joseph, you can stay on the line with us. I'm also being joined by Dr. Manilal, who is the CEO of PETA. Thank you very much, Dr. Manilal, for joining us. What is your perspective on the way this is now playing out here? We are seeing this letter, which not only absolves the shooter of anything wrong at all, it completely closes down the case.
Yeah, I think it's really shocking because while Asghar Ali gets to return his funding and detainment for the time being, Avni and her cubs were made to pay with their lives. So meanwhile, PETA India has been involved in cases, similar cases, where the Langur killing case, where the offender was denied bail for multiple times. So this is really unfortunate that Asghar Ali have been given a clean chit, but I think probably we should approach the court and, get some relief for Avni and her cubs.
Right. I'm going to go back to my colleague Amita at this point in time. Amita, like you just heard, both Dr. Manilal and Jose are saying that, this needs to now be dealt with at the court level. What have you heard from the state government on this issue? Has there been any kind of a response? And like the petitioner was also pointing out, the fact that does this letter mean that the case is closed from all angles? Does it mean that it is closed at the state government level as well?
Well, there's a bit of an ambiguity as far as the state government is concerned, Avni, because when we spoke to the additional PCCF officer, Virendra Tiwari, very clearly pointed out that the state committee report has been looked into, that they have sought to reply on the kind of violations. According to the state committee, they have sent out, and asked for a reply from the state committee members, and that is yet to be given to them. And post that, they will take a decision on whether to entirely close this case or not. But as far as the FTCM and investigating officer is concerned, they have, of course, mentioned in the letter very clearly that it has been resolved and closed.
All right. Let me come back to Dr. Manilal. You said that you've handled such cases before as well. Typically, in your experience, this kind of a case, how should it now really play out? Because there are still these unanswered questions, but it doesn't seem that there is any will to sort of really try and find out and discover the truth and take action according to that.
Yeah, so there are multiple reports which very, very clearly indicate that. I mean, a report by the National Tiger Conservation Body, and there are postmortem reports. There are, letters representation issued, given by the veterinary bodies. All very, very clearly indicate that a person who is not even qualified as a veterinarian, who can't give a tranquilizer, decide a dose of a tranquilizer. The postmortem reports which says that what have happened by killing Avni at the first phase, they were all, violations of the law. And at the Langur case, where the animal was beaten up and killed, it was not a surprise when the Honorable Bombay High Court denied bail more than 4 times. So I think we have a precedent already set. Even in the Northeast, most of the courts have now fast-tracked the cases on wildlife issues, and the wildlife crime is being considered something really, really serious. And people who offenders have been, punished for years now. This need to be taken very seriously, and I think probably whoever are responsible for the death of Avni and her cubs, I think need to be punished.
Right. All right. Let's go back to Jose as well. Jose, if we look at that letter that was written by the Maharashtra Forest Department, it very clearly says that Asghar Ali Khan and his father were duly authorized to undertake the operation to tranquilize or eliminate the dangerous man-eater. There was obviously a lot of discrepancy in this issue of whether they were supposed to only tranquilize it or whether they were supposed to eliminate her altogether, and how that was supposed to be done. And then that's when this whole self-defense theory really came about, that they were forced to eliminate her. So this still raises, there's still a lot of contradiction in this letter as well.
See, as a committee, our mandate was very clear to investigate what happened on that night and what happened at the time, what happened in the last moments. So the issue of the letter, that is up to the Chief Wildlife Warden to issue the letter. And that is, the Chief Wildlife Warden of a state has got an absolute authority, and he is a learned person to take a decision. Right. To issue a letter, whether, to issue an order to shoot or tranquilize. So that is his rights, and that is within his power to issue a letter. So he has issued a letter. Now, whether the letter or the directions in that letter was followed by the person, whether Mr. Asghar Ali Khan was actually authorized to carry out the operation, that's which we clearly mentioned in our report, that
right.
The authorization was in the name of his father. And the questions about the guns which were used, NTCA has given clear guidances about the kind of guns which can be used. So all those things, and also there are precedences like, you don't do tranquilizing operations at night. Right. I'm coming back to the thing in the simple legal language. We talk about mens rea. What is the intention? So what was the intention of Mr. Asghar Ali Khan, who's going with the two loaded guns,
Yes.
searching for a tiger? Was the intention was to tranquilize the tigress and save it, or was the intention was to kill the tiger?
Yes.
So that intention is what is questioned.
Absolutely. Jose, that's a very valid point, and that, in fact, that is perhaps one of the reasons why there is so much, debate surrounding this, because as far as intention is concerned, that is something that can be obviously not proved in any which way. Let's also go across to Jerryl Banait, activist joining us on the phone line. Jerryl, your perspective on this issue, the way it has played out so far, the fact that there is now a letter that sort of closes the case entirely.
Thank you. This is a very black day in the history of conservation, or as far as wildlife is concerned in India particularly. As Mr. Rose also said, who's the NTCA Chief Investigating Officer, he also shows in his report that there are so many violations, and clearly there were no intentions to save Avni in any manner whatsoever. The case being closed today is not a shocker, because the Forest Department always had the intentions to kill her and do not bring any justice to what has been done. And this is of a sort that criminals can commit a crime and the Forest Department will protect them with no repercussions at all on anybody. When a 7-member committee tells that there are some violations and a single committee member, the investigation officer, if he gives a clean sheet to the hunters, how is this going to affect our national policies, and how is this going to affect our wildlife conservation?
Right. Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, Kamna Pandey, animal rights activist, also joining me at this point. Kamna, your perspective, do you think that enough has been done by the concerned authorities to ensure that the truth has been found out, whether it is the NTCA? Obviously, the government in this case doesn't seem to be taking enough cognizance of the problems that are there in this case.
Enough has been done, actually, can be said the other way around. I think every effort has been done to protect the killer, to protect Asghar Ali Khan. We have seen the post-mortem reports totally shattering his claims of self-defense. We have seen another post-mortem report come. We have seen vet, the presiding death over there. Their letters we have seen. The NTCA committee report we have seen. They have completely dismissed their claims. We have seen the state committee report also, which is governed by state. Even then, that committee report also said so many things, so many violations they pointed out. Whether it was the way this report says that every order, every protocol was followed. How could it have been followed? When the Wildlife Protection Act says that only the Chief Wildlife Warden can authorize us to kill, Chief Wildlife Warden never signed it. It was signed and then reinstated by the level of CCS and TCCS. It was never signed by Chief Wildlife Warden. So there are I can spend an hour naming the violations that have been done. We have clearly seen 2 months passed, and then the gun was lying with the hunter. We know modifications can be done in gun. We know there has to be, every indication was made that there were violations of Arms Act. The bore was not the specified bore, the permitted bore was not used. We all know that bores can be changed. We all know modifications can be done. For 2 months, the gun was lying there for what reason? There has to be some reason. Did anybody look into it? So there are more questions than there are answers. Every time they do something, they raise more questions. And clearly, the reason why we have been asked that the forest minister has to step down, because he's the highest authority. He is being accused by all of us that he's involved.
Absolutely, Kamna. Sorry to interrupt you, but completely take your point that at this point there are more questions than there are answers as far as this case is concerned. Amita, coming to you for one final question. Like you heard several of our guests saying that, the only way that this can be resolved is in court. What is the plan now going ahead as far as the petitioners are concerned? Is there anything specific? What is their plan of action?
Well, two things, Avni. One is, of course, that the petitioners will now move court. They've already moved court as we speak. PIL will be heard very soon. The date is yet to be finalized. So that is going to happen at the Bombay High Court. Apart from that, the state government itself is pretty ambiguous in its answer that was given to us, very clearly saying that they will wait for a reply from the state committee members as to what violations have in fact taken place, and then take a call whether this is going to be officially closed or not. So these are the two things that are awaited at the moment.
All right. Thanks, Amita, for getting us all those details, and thank you to all our guests for joining us with all of your perspectives as well. The question really is that there are so many points that can be debated. There's so many unanswered questions, and there's so many contradictions in everything that has been put forth. Nothing at all really suggests that this was done with the proper procedure. Everything suggests that proper procedure was not followed in this case. The question then arises is, why is it that the state government is not taking this more seriously? How can this kind of a letter be sent saying that the case is closed, and that letter says that completely gives a clean chit to Avni's shooter? Those are the questions that still remain unanswered.